Hi guys, today we're going to take a look at lesson 71, finding the whole group when a fraction is known. For example, if I said I have one half of the cookies and I could see that 2 are on the table, you would be able to tell me that altogether there were 4. So that's kind of what we're dealing with here. We're going to use diagrams to help us. And the first example is when Juan finished 51 pages, or page 51, he was 3/8 of the way through the book. So his book had how many pages? So we're trying to figure that out. So if I look at my diagram, okay, I would notice that I could mark that 3/8 of the diagram was 51 pages. And then I would ask you, how do I know what each block is? So if that whole yellow block is 51, I would divide it by 3, okay? So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to show you that I would try and figure that out. I'd say, don't work ahead, don't look at that part. 51 divided by 3 tells me that each block on my yellow highlighted part was 17. So I come over here and I would see that, sure enough, 17 plus 17 plus 17 does equal 51, so I did it correctly. And then if each of those is 17, I would be able to say, well, that would mean the rest were 17. Okay, and it's kind of a long math problem to add them all up. So over here, I take 17 times 8. And you might ask, well, where did you get the 8? Remember, it was 3/8, so my denominator was 8. That's how many there are all together. So 17 times 8 gave me 136. So we can solve the problem using a diagram. The second way we can do, though, is write an equation, okay? And so my equation might sound like this. 3/8 of the pages read equals or is 51. So 3/8 of his pages are or is 51. So there's my equation. And so we learned in our investigation that when we are trying to isolate the variable p, we have to, in this case, we're multiplying, so we would have to divide. Well, that can get messy. So we know when we multiply by a fraction, we can actually multiply both sides by its reciprocal, which reminds us the keep, change, flip ultimately helps us to multiply by a reciprocal if we're dividing. Okay, so over here, I rewrite my problem, and it looks messy, but here's what I started with. 3/8 p equals 51, and I multiplied by its reciprocal, which was 8 over 3, and I did it to both sides. And if I were to cross cancel, I'd notice that 8 goes into 8 one time, so those cancel, and that cancels, and it leaves me just with p. It basically goes away. So p equals 51, I put it over 1 times 8/3, and I can cross cancel to make it smaller. 3 goes into 51 17 times, and I end up with p equals 136 over 1, which is 136 pages. So the original problem, I'm going to back up, said his book had how many pages? It turned out to be 136, and I can solve it both by a diagram and by the equation. Okay, so let's take a look at the next page. I'm going to look at the diagram again. Okay, and so the diagram, the problem says, as Justin went from room to room, he found that 3/5 of the lights were on and that 30 lights were off. So I mark my diagram. I can see here, if I were to make 5 boxes, that 3 of them I mark as on. That leaves me 2/5 are off. So that should, and they told me that was 30. So what I'm thinking is well, if I take 30 and I divide it by 2, that should clue me in that there are 15 lights in each box. Okay, so the 15 total. But what I really want to know is how many lights were on. Okay, so if I have 15 lights in each box and there are 3 of the 5 boxes, I'll go 15 times 3, and I should get, actually, I think I did the problem wrong. I found the 75. That's how many lights there are altogether. 15 times 5. But how many are on was 15 times 3. So 45 were on. So how do I figure out how many pages, or sorry, how many lights altogether? This is where we go back over to the equation. So it told me that 3/5 were on and 30 were off. And I know 3/5 plus 2/5 gives me 5/5. So I knew that 2/5 of them were on. Okay, so I can come over here and I can say 30 is 2/5 of what big number? Okay, so 2/5 of a number is 30. And so I go ahead and start, and I'm going to cover this. So 30 equals 2/5 x, and I know I'm going to multiply by its reciprocal on both sides, so I can get rid of the 2/5. I'll isolate this variable. And if I do the rules of cross canceling, I'll notice that those go away. So basically it becomes 1. And I do my math. I can cross cancel. 2 goes into 2 one time. 2 goes into 30 15 times. And I get 75 over 1 equals x. And that means that there's 75 lights altogether. Okay. So your practice set needs to be completed and sent in to me on Google Classroom. Okay, and then just look at Google Classroom for your assignment. Okay, and we'll talk to you guys later.